So in this tutorial, we'll be going through how to change the layout for most of the WooCommerce pages if they look like an absolute dog's breakfast, like this one does by default. So if you've installed WooCommerce and you've gone through and added the basic pages or done the installation with a wizard using an Elementor-based theme, in this case, we're using a flavor of Zeta, and it looks something like this, where it's an absolute dog's breakfast or it's hanging off to the side or there's something weird going on, then we may need to update some of the styling code in the background. Now, while this is a beginner level or an intermediate level tutorial, we will be doing some coding stuff, and it will take a few extra minutes, especially if you're unfamiliar with how to use the inspector. If you're a dev and you're watching this, that's no problems. What we're going to do is drop some stuff in the customizer, which you can then transfer to your child theme afterwards. So let's start by logging into WordPress. So we want to go to just the URL. So in this case, error418/.coffee, and then /wp-login.php, and then hit enter. Brilliant. So let me just zoom in to make this a bit easier. Enter your username or your email address and your password. And once you've logged in, you'll be presented with your dashboard. So what we want to do is head back out to the shop. So we'll go to mouse over your site name up the top left of your page and then go to Visit Store. That'll take you out to the front. And there's a non-zero chance that it'll look like an absolute dog's breakfast. It may be hanging off to the left here. It may just be completely the wrong color. Or you may get this kind of bleed where your menu is not taken into account and it ends up showing weird lines and whatnot. So let's start by going to the customizer. So that's top left with the little paintbrush there. And that will take you to the WordPress customizer system. We want to go into WordPress default in most cases, and then additional CSS. And you can see here we've already applied some rules to get titles in and a few other bits and pieces. The next thing we want to do is bring up the inspector. So right click and then look for inspect or inspect element, depending on your browser. And that will bring up a window down the bottom here. Now, if you've got two little blocks there, you may need to close the bottom one to make it a bit easier to see. Now, the inspector is showing what's called the document object model, or the DOM, which is a representation of how your browser interprets the code that WordPress is outputting. So you can see here it's all neatly structured. And by mousing over different bits and pieces, you can see what elements belong to what parts of the page. All right, so what we want to do is find the element that represents this big white block here with the shop as the title. So we can start by just mousing over until we find the highlighted bit. Now, I suspect that, which will be primary here, is for the entire page, which we don't want to do. We just want to get that sort of mini bit in here. So we just keep going down. And if this is hidden, for example, you can just hit the little arrow to reveal the contents. And we want to keep going down until the bit that we want is the only bit that's highlighted. So you can see we'll just go down there. Okay, so now that's showing the header. So that means we need to go one up. All right, fantastic. So that is likely the one that we want to hit. Now, typically these are called in WordPress, it's an article block, or it could be the main content area or a content block, depending on the class or the ID. So in this case, it's the article that we're after. Now, you'll notice on the right-hand side here, that's behind me. So I'm just going to pop this into a different window so you can see what's going on. So by moving this out, it makes it easier for me to see. However, it also means that I'm going to have to jump between WordPress and the inspector here for the purposes of this tutorial. So don't worry about undocking yours. This is just because I'm on screen and it will make it hard to see if it's behind me. Okay, so we have the article selected, and you'll notice on the right-hand side here under the Styles tab, and there are a few different tabs here, but Styles is the one we're looking at. There is a set of rules, and these rules are how the browser interprets the styling rules that it's given. We can see here we've got the article highlighted, and it has background colors here and padding and margins and all sorts. And what we're going to do is tweak the padding and the margins for this. So you can see we've got one rule here that's a bit darker than the other. So that's the rule we're going to use. So Control C to copy, then back to the browser. And we want to just paste that in there. So Control V on my keyboard for this one. Then we want to put in an opening brace. So a brace is a curly brace. And you'll see there, if you've got the assistant, it will put in the closing one automatically. And we're going to add some extra margin to the top of this block. So the margin is margin, oops, spelt correctly, margin, and then just use your cursor up and down to get to the right one. So margin top, then a full colon. And in this case, we're going to make it 50 pixels, so 50 px. And you can see there, it automatically adjusted the height on the fly. So we know that that's all right, and the preview is showing that's correct. So hit publish to save that. And the next thing we want to take care of is this white background. So let's go back to our inspector. And we can see there, the background color for this element is already set to transparent. So that means that there's something else that's creating that white background. So the trick here is to go down and find other elements that it could be. So start at the top level, the one that we've just played with, and then look for anything else. So in this case, we've got a before there, which is a pseudo class, and there it is. So there's your background color on the right-hand side. And you can test that simply by unchecking that to see what happens. Great. So the background color is in the before here is the one that's affecting it. So now what we need to do is add a new rule for that. So copy the rule on the right-hand side there. Copy. Back into the customizer. Hit enter. Paste that in. Curly brace. And we're going to set the background color. And if you don't have this helper, that's okay. You can just type it in full. We're going to set that to transparent. There we go. And we'll publish that. However, now we have a problem because it's made this select box on the right-hand side here completely unreadable. So now we need to correct that one. So right-click, inspect, and you'll see that's brought up the inspector again, but it's taken us directly to the element that's being affected. Okay, and again, we're over to the right-hand side here, and we've got these rules. So we'll copy that. Go back to the customizer, scroll down, hit enter, paste that in. So just Control C and Control V on my keyboard for this one to make it a bit easier. And I highly recommend learning the hotkeys if you're new to this. Curly brace again. And we're going to set the background color to white. Now, if you're using hex codes instead of named colors, that's cool. That works. So that's hash FF, FF, FF. But for most people, just the name of the color, where a named color is available, is fine. If you're using a custom color as well, so for example, we wanted to use the background color for this one, you can use a color picker to get the hex color for that as well. All right, hit publish again. And while I was fixing that, I noticed a problem. So mousing over that one, that's blue, which is not on brand. And the button color is also white, the button text is also white when it should be black for us. So to fix that, we need to right click inspect, and that brings up the inspector. We'll start just by changing the color, the text color. And we can see here we have a whole bunch of rules, but we want to concentrate primarily on the WooCommerce button rule. And you can see there by mousing over that, it's highlighting the rules it's being applied to down the bottom there. Click on that one, Control C to copy. Whoops. So I just made a mistake there and hit the escape button on the keyboard, and that automatically corrected it. So copy that back over here and then paste in. Braces, and then color, American spelling, not the correct way. And we want to make that black. Again, you can use a hex code if you want to, but a named color is just as easy. And that has automatically changed it. All right, so we'll publish that one. The next thing we need to deal with is this mouse over color, which is awful. So right click again and inspect. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to force the state. So right click the element and then either force state, or if you're in Firefox, it could be change pseudo class. And we want to set that to hover. And you can see there, that's forced the state of the button. So we can see that all the time. And you would have noticed as well, this would jumped on the right-hand side. So what we want to do is try and find something that has background color with that bluey color in it. So down we go. And there it is. So background color is blue, and in Chrome and Firefox and Brave, it'll give you the color there as a hint. So that makes it a bit easier to see. So grab that rule, copy Control C on your keyboard, scroll down all the way to the end, hit enter, paste in, curly braces again, and we want to set the background color, spelled correctly, to the normal color for this one. So to get that, let's go and have a look at that one, inspect element, and we want to keep going down until we can see a button color we're familiar with. There we go. So on the right-hand side, the border color and the button color gives you that little preview there. Is that behind me again? It is, sorry. All right, so we've scrolled all the way down until we can see the color that looks familiar to us. We'll copy that, so Control C, and then paste that in here. And you can see that has changed the background color, and it will stay that way when it's being hovered over. So publish that. And that's gold. All right, so that has allowed us to change the background color here, to change the background color on this one, and to correct the branding on the buttons. So that is brilliant. Now, the next thing is this little double up of the shop title there. That doesn't need to be there. So we're going to try and find a way to isolate these two. So again, right click and inspect element. There we go. And H1 is page title. Now, this is a little bit cheeky, and I normally wouldn't do that, but in this case, we can see here the page title and page description are showing up, and they don't necessarily need to. So what we're going to do is isolate this specific page. So if there is an ID there, so we can see there that's ID is post 513, copy that, hit enter, and we're selecting an ID this time instead of a class. So put the hash or a pound sign, paste in, go back to the inspector, and we want to get rid of the page description for this page and this page only. So 513 and then page description. So I've just double clicked that one and then copy, space, dot, and then paste in page description, braces again, and in this case, then display none. And that's gotten rid of that one. Now, the reason I've done this specifically targeting this page and this page only, as opposed to doing it across the site like the rest of these rules, is because there are other other pages on the site that I don't want to hide the page description on. It's just this one. All right. There we go. So that is the shop page just about sorted. Now that line down the bottom is no good to us either, so we'll have a quick look at that. So right click, inspect element, and let's see where that is. All right, so it's highlighted the article again, same as before. So let's go to the computed styles. And we can see with that box model right down the bottom in the border section here, which in this browser is highlighted orange, it's got a 1. And we can tell if that's the right one by double clicking and then typing 0 in there. And if that disappears, it does, that means we've found the right element. So that's back to 1. So the next thing we'll do is go and look for the style rule that applies that border. So back to styles, all the way to the top, and we're looking for a border bottom one. There we go. And we can check if that's the correct rule by just unchecking. Yep, that disappears. Rechecking. Copy that. So Control C. Hit enter. Paste. And is that the same rule that we had before? You know what? It looks like it. Okay, so let's delete that and then scroll all the way back up to our first rule that we put in that set up the margins. We'll put a semicolon in after that one, hit enter and go margin. No, sorry, border. Bottom. None. And publish. And that's gotten rid of the border at the bottom as well. Okay, so that I think is a pretty good start. So let's go back to the website and have a look at our other shop pages to see if anything else has been affected. So click the X up the top left, and that's taken us back out. And let's add something to the basket. And then we will view the basket. This might be called a cart in yours as well. And that does not look right. Okay, cool. So we have a few more rules to get in there. Go to Customize up the top left again. WordPress default, additional CSS. Okay, and then we will have a look at this. Don't worry about the little X if you see that. That's just an icon change. That's got nothing to do with what we're doing. Right click and inspect, and the inspector will pop back up again. And we can see here, this is highlighting the different parts of the table. So what we want to do again is go to the right hand side and look for something with a background color in it. There we go. Table TH has got a background color of F8. So that's a very, very light color. So let's uncheck that one. And that is, interestingly, hasn't actually fixed the problem we were after, but look down the bottom here and it's fixed that one. So let's take the win on that. Copy. All the way to the bottom. Hit enter, paste. And then add background color. Transparent. Put a semicolon after that because I suspect we'll have some more rules in here. All right, publish. That's done. All right, so let's go back to the inspector, and that's not great, but it's still a lot better. Right click, inspect. So let's see if we can find out what the next thing is that's causing that background color to go in. Okay, and I don't think there's anything applying directly to this heading that is the case. So let's go up an element to the TR in this case. Whoops. And nothing important on that one. So the next element up, the T head up, and there it is. So, yep, that's done the trick. So let's copy that rule. Scroll down, hit enter, braces again, set the background color to transparent. Which is great, but you'll also notice now that the heading is really, really hard to read. So we're going to change the color back to white. So color, American spelling, and then white, or of course, the hex code that you're using. Now, interestingly enough, that has not applied. So that means that there's a more important rule that we need to override. So there's a bit of a cheeky trick to this one. Put a space in after the color and then exclamation mark and important. And it's still not done it. So that means that that rule doesn't apply. Delete that, delete that, delete that. Publish. And I suspect it's probably on this one. So right click, inspect. And we can see there. Here's your rule, and that's the color for that one. So copy that, Control C, scroll down, drop that in, paste, and then color, again, American spelling, and in our case, white. There we go, done. Right, the next thing I want to take care of is this horrid looking bar in the middle there. That's really weird. So right click that, inspect, and let's see if we can't find out what that is. So we've got that's highlighted there. And we can see it's got a really weird setup there where it's got some padding, which is sort of the greeny yellow there. And then it almost looks like a border. So we can confirm that by going up to computed. And then, yeah, we can see there's a whopping great big 16 pixel border. So let's change that to see how it will look. So 1 and then enter. And I think that looks a lot nicer as a single pixel border. So let's change that back to the default. All right, click on that element and then back to style so we can see the rules that have been applied to it. And we're looking for something with a 16 pixel margin that isn't the one that we just added. So that's the one that we just added. Scroll down and look for border top. There we go. Now this is an interesting one here. We've got border top. Yep, and that's it. So what it's done, instead of looking for the 16 pixels in our case, it's added 1em. So 1em is the height of one standard font element. In our case, we've got that set to 16 pixels, but it could be anywhere from 5 to 35. So let's grab that. And we're going to force that rule on. So to the bottom, paste in, Control V, curly braces, and then border top width is 1 pixel. There we go. So that's applied that straight away, and we'll hit publish there. Okay, and that's done. Now, again, we're left with this sort of weird element where we've got top borders, we've got inside borders, but we have no bottom borders on anything. So let's try and find out why that's the case. Right click inside the table, go to inspect, and let's go. I think this one might be a bit further up the chain. So let's have a look at the computed model, and we can see there's the rule we just applied, and I suspect this is going to be applied to the table itself. So we want to go up, 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 up until we get to the table. And yes, I was right. Looking at the computed model, we can see it has a left, top, and right-hand border of 1, but no bottom border has been set. So let's see if we can set that. Let's just double-click in there, type in 1, and that's not worked. It's still got an overriding rule. So let's go to styles. Here we go. So we can see here with the table, you've got the top one as 1 pixel, right as 1 pixel, bottom as 0, and then left as 1. And then it's got this important rule afterwards, which tells the browser that this rule supersedes other rules. And what we're going to do is we're going to make another important rule that will supersede this one again. So the way to do that is to figure out what this rule applies to. In this case, it's just the table. So we'll copy that. We'll add the table rule here. And we're going to set the border bottom width to 1px. All right, so that's done. However, of course, it's not affected anything just yet. So let's go back to our inspector. And again, I do have this in a separate window. There's a good chance yours is just down the bottom there. That's fine. I'm just doing this because the rules were behind me when I was trying to do the tube before. So if you've just tuned in. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and find a rule that supersedes this one and then make that important. And the way to do that is to move up the chain to find an element that is available on this page and the pages you want, but isn't necessarily available on other pages you don't want. So in this case, because we're using WooCommerce, let's go up to the WooCommerce class and we'll make that a more direct rule. So copy that. So double click, Control C, go back to our little doodad here, put a dot, a period, then paste in the WooCommerce and then put a space in. And what that does is that says, right, you've got a rule that is applying to tables and that's important, but we want to specifically apply this one to a WooCommerce table. So we've published that, and of course it still has no effect because of that overriding important in the other one. So we're going to do the same thing here. So after the 1px, but before the colon, space, exclamation mark, and then type important. And we can see there, that has done the job. Okay, so that's great. That's the table now looking a bit more cohesive. This button still isn't in on brand, so let's change that one as well. So right click, get that up so you can see it. Right click, inspect, that brings up the inspector again. And we've got all the border colors there, but the color is wrong. So let's go and find a decent rule to work on there. And yeah, this looks like it's going to be the one. So we'll copy that. Hit enter. Paste in braces and then color. And in our case, black, which is a named color. And publish. Okay, so that looks like it's done the job. The update basket still isn't on brand though. So right click that. Oh, no, that's completely disabled. Now, when that's disabled, what you can do is just change that and that re-enables it. So that's, you know what, that's close enough. That's going to be fine. I think it's not perfect, but it is certainly good enough without getting a programmer involved. All right, so we'll close that off. Okay, so that is the cart looking a lot better. So the next thing we need to do is go to the checkout page and see how that's going. All right, we're nearly there, but this is still a little bit ordinary. So let's look at this product total or product information there and see what's going on. So customize again. WordPress default, additional CSS, scroll down. Now, I should actually mention as well, the additional CSS may or may not appear in WordPress default. It depends on your theme. The Zeta framework keeps it in there. If you can't see additional CSS in there somewhere, that means that it's in one of these other options. So just have a surf through. So WordPress default for us, additional CSS, scroll down. We'll right click this product block over here, and that will show you what's what. And we can see that we have in fact got the right place just by what's being highlighted. We need to try and find where that background is set. And here we go, background color. And we can apply that rule. There we go. By checking that, and we can see that, yes, that is in fact the correct rule. So copy that, Control C, Control V. Actually, what I'm going to do is make this one a transparent background. So we have a couple of transparent backgrounds up here. So let's drop one in there. So what I'm looking for here is the rule that we're overriding rather than the actual thing that it's being applied to. So, comma, enter, paste. And what that's done is that's taken this single rule and we're making it apply to two separate elements. While we're here, I'm going to do the same thing for this one as well because there's no point repeating ourselves. So, just in there at the end of the element rule and then before the curly brace, comma, enter, paste, space, and then we can delete that as well. And that's making our code more efficient. So we'll publish that. The next thing we want to do is have a look at this. Now, that could arguably be left because you do want it to be highlighted, but I'm not a fan. So we'll right click and change this as well. So that's inspect there. And we can see there we've got the color. And let's see if I can find the rule that is applying to the actual, where are we? Here we go. So copy that one. Back to our thingo here. Now I suspect we're going to have to add more than one rule to this one. So we'll go all the way to the bottom, enter, paste, background color is transparent. And the color is white. So that'll affect the text. Ooh, might need to put an important tag on that. There we go. Right. And that is the core pages done. So the next thing to check is the My Account page. So we'll close out of that one. Right. So the next thing is My Account. All right. And because we've already applied rules to tables and backgrounds, I suspect this is going to be okay. So that's the core pages for the website's WooCommerce system done. Now, is it as good as having a professional designer go in there and mess with it for you? No. But it's good enough without a programmer getting involved for you to launch your site on. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, if you are looking at this as an actual WordPress developer, either just doing the styling or as a PHP dev, you can then take the information that we threw into the customizer here, copy and into, you can take the CSS styling that we added and add that to the style.css in your child theme. Don't add it to your main theme. It's got to be inside your child theme. And that way that will compile differently and it will be a bit more of a WordPressy way at it. If you don't have a child theme for your site, that's okay. You can chuck it in the additional CSS and the WordPress caching will just deal with it. Or if you want to learn how to make a child theme, take a look in the description below for a link to another video. Fantastic. So thank you very much for persisting to the end. This has been an absolutely huge, intense session. If there's anything you missed, I'd highly recommend that you go back over the video and pause at the sections. There are links in the description below to the different parts that we cover. Also, this is part of a wider course on how to manage your website, one of our masterclasses. There is also a link in the description below to sign up to that one and find out a bit more about how you can really supercharge your WordPress site. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.